Hey, Phil White here, the Earth Sciences Librarian at CU Boulder. Wanted to make a quick video about downloading FEMA flood zone GIS data. If you were to Google a phrase like that, you would pretty shortly wind up on this National Flood Hazard Layer website. This is what FEMA calls its flood map data, and the place you need to go is the NFHL viewer, which looks like this. I'm going to check it out now. And when the page loads, they give you this splash screen. We can close that out, and you can see all these red areas here. They're lined up. These are the areas that where FEMA has data for. And we'll just go ahead and zoom in on our area of interest. In this case, I'm going to zoom in on Denver. And as you zoom in, it will eventually change views and you'll be able to actually view some of the data. If you zoom out a step, you'll see that there's a grid here, and when you click on it, it has some information here. One, you can download a graphic of the map for this particular section of the grid, or you can download the data. And this bit is a little confusing. It's for the whole county, actually. So as you zoom out, you're not just going to, if you click on any of these, you're not just going to get the data for that grid. You're actually going to get for the whole county. So if we click anywhere in here within Denver County, we're going to download the whole county's data. And I've already downloaded it. We'll come to you in a zipped file. And this is all the stuff you get. So there's a ton of things in here. There's multiple shape files. Looks like about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 or 8 or 10 different shape files in here. So what are they? Well, I have my QGIS opened up here, and I know after poking around with this for a few minutes that actually the one we want is this one, which is basically flood hazard area. If I take my shapefile and add it to my QGIS, we get this. Okay, now there's a bunch of stuff in here, and right now it just looks like the whole county and some layers over here. If I were to open up my attribute table, I would see a few different things. So there are flood zone codes like AE, which is within the 100-year flood zones. X's are sometimes of minimal hazard. Sometimes they're in the 0.2% flood hazard zone. So what is all this stuff? This is when it's kind of useful to know about this page. So if you go to fema.gov/flood-zones, you'll arrive here. It gives you a description of all the different zones. So basically, the special flood hazard area zones, which are anything with a 1% chance of being flooded, which is basically the terminology for a 100-year flood zone, are any of these with a zones, any of these zones, mostly beginning with A. Zone B or X could be something else. Anything labeled as being a 0.2% chance, that is the 500-year flood zone. Okay. If you want more information about each of those individual zones, you can scroll down on this page and check out the description of each of the zones and what they mean right there. Okay. Now, so if I go back to QGIS, I've got my table here. I'm going to close out my table. So knowing what those things are now is really helpful because you can pull it all out of this data layer. In QGIS, I would do this with display filters. You could do this in ArcGIS by selecting certain areas out that you want and pulling them into a new data layer. The way I'm going to do it right now would be to just style it accordingly. I could make a filter and say field zone equals A or a E or a H or a O. Okay, give it a better color. Blue. And there I've just pulled out all of the 100-year flood zones, right? I could do the same for the 500-year zones, do something like this, add another rule and say anything labeled as 0.2% chance of flood. Color it something else. We'll just make it kind of light blue. Okay, apply. Okay, now I've got both those zones. So that's basically how it works. It's important to take a good look at the attribute table. If you're doing whatever GIS software you're using for this, just make sure you look at the attributes because all the field zones are here, which will tell you what they are. But sometimes X is a 500-year zone. Sometimes X is not a 500-year zone. So just make sure you take a close look at the attribute table to figure out which attributes you're going to pull out of this layer to display in your map or perform some kind of analysis on. Okay, so that's it. Definitely let me know if you have any questions, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye for now.